The metal palace of Vega 9 was supposed to be the quietest place in the galaxy, built from silver walls that could block out even the roar of plasma storms. But tonight it trembled with sound. The cry of the Cyborg Queen's infant echoed through every hall, a strange broken sound, half mechanical whine, half human wail. The Queen sat alone on her shining throne, her silver fingers pressed against her temples. She had fought wars, conquered systems, and commanded entire fleets without fear. Yet now she faced a tiny child she could not control. The infant's eyes glowed dim blue, its little arms twitching, soft skin connected to polished metal plates. It cried without rest hour after hour, and the sound pierced the Queen's steel heart. Around her, royal medbots floated helplessly, scanning the child with bright red lights. "No malfunction detected," they repeated. "All systems stable." But the child kept crying, louder and sharper, as if every note carried pain that no machine could understand. The Queen turned to her guards. "Why will it not stop?" she demanded. Her voice shook with frustration. No one answered. The guards lowered their heads, afraid to look at her. The Queen's glowing eyes burned with cold fury. In another part of the palace, far below the royal decks, a human janitor named Eli pushed his cleaning cart through a dim corridor. The floor hummed softly under his boots. He had worked there for years, cleaning up after the royal engineers. Most cyborgs ignored him, treating him like a shadow. He didn't mind. He only wanted a quiet life for his daughter back on Earth. But that night the sound reached him, a distant, painful cry that didn't sound like a machine at all. It echoed through the air vents, thin and trembling. He stopped and listened. It was the kind of cry that made a parent's heart twist. He remembered nights long ago when his baby girl, Anna, had cried the same way. Lost, scared, needing someone's touch. He looked up toward the sound. "That's no machine," he whispered. In the royal chamber above, the Queen stood beside the cradle of black glass. The child's cries grew harsher, and the light in its eyes flickered dangerously. One of the medbots beeped a warning. Energy imbalance increasing. Infant approaching system failure. The Queen's face softened with panic. "Do something," she commanded, but the bots only repeated, "System stable. Emotion source unidentified, emotion." The Queen hated that word. Her kind had erased it generations ago, replacing hearts with power cores. Yet tonight her child was proof that the past could not be deleted. Half human, half machine, the future of both worlds. And she was losing it. The Queen fell to her knees beside the cradle. "Please," she whispered, voice trembling for the first time in her reign. "Stop crying, little one." But the infant wailed louder. Suddenly a small cleaning drone rolled into the hall. A metallic voice called out, "Maintenance request incomplete. Human worker Eli 7 not accounted for." The Queen turned sharply. "Human?" Moments later, the chamber door slid open and 2 guards dragged Eli inside, his hands raised. "He was near the royal quarters, Your Majesty," one guard said nervously. The Queen's eyes flashed. "Why?" Eli looked around, then toward the cradle. "I heard crying," he said softly. The Queen's metallic face twitched in disbelief. "You heard my child through 20 decks of reinforced steel?" Eli nodded. A parent always hears a baby cry. For a moment the chamber fell silent except for the infant's wailing. The Queen stared at the human, this simple man in a faded uniform, and something strange stirred inside her. "Step closer," she ordered. The guards hesitated, but the Queen waved them aside. Eli walked slowly to the cradle. The child's small face turned toward him, glowing eyes blinking through tears. Eli knelt beside it, his hand shaking slightly. He spoke in a calm, low voice. "Hey there, little one," he said. "You're safe." "It's okay." The Queen's eyes widened. The child's mechanical heartbeat slowed. The cry softened, then faded into quiet hiccups. No AI, no circuit, no code had been able to do that. Only a human voice. The Queen stepped closer, her metal footsteps echoing in the still air. "What did you do?" she whispered. Eli looked up at her, tired eyes filled with something no machine could copy. "I didn't do anything special," he said. "I just listened." For the first time in centuries, the great Cyborg Queen felt small. The child rested quietly now, one tiny hand clutching Eli's finger. A human finger. And as the silence filled the room, the Queen realized this was only the beginning of something far greater than science or rule. Somewhere deep inside her, beneath the metal and code, a heartbeat began to stir. Eli stood in the royal chamber, frozen between fear and disbelief. Just moments ago, he was a janitor cleaning the metal floors. Now he was face to face with the most powerful being in the galaxy, the Cyborg Queen of Vega 9. Her glowing eyes watched him like cold stars, and yet, behind the light, he saw something strange. Pain. The infant lay silent now, eyes half closed, small chest rising and falling softly. The queen stepped closer to Eli, her metallic gown whispering like wind through steel. "What did you do to my child?" she asked again, her voice sharp but unsteady. Eli swallowed hard. "Nothing, Your Majesty, I just spoke to it." "Spoke?" The queen tilted her head, confused. "You used words?" "Yes," Eli said quietly. "Sometimes a baby just needs a voice that feels safe." Her eyes dimmed slightly as if trying to understand a language older than machines. "Safety," she repeated almost to herself. "My palace has the strongest shields in the galaxy. What safety could my child need?" Eli looked at the infant again. "Not from danger," he said softly. "From loneliness." The words hung in the air like a secret. Even the royal guards looked up, unsure if the queen would destroy him for saying such a thing. But instead, she stood still. For the first time in years, silence filled the throne room, and a soft, living silence. The queen watched Eli as he gently reached out toward the child again. Her metal hands twitched, ready to stop him, but she didn't. The baby opened its small eyes, bright blue with a faint flicker of silver, and grasped his finger once more. The queen's processors scanned the infant's vitals instantly, heartbeat stable, system temperature normal. She had seen no such reading since birth. "How is this possible?" she whispered. Eli shrugged. "I don't know, but I think maybe it can feel me." She turned away, pacing slowly. "Feel you? You speak as if emotion is data." "No," Eli said. "Emotion is what makes us alive." Her head turned sharply. "Alive? Machines live longer than any human." "We do not die," Eli nodded sadly. "Maybe not. But you also don't live." The guards flinched, waiting for an order to remove him. But the queen said nothing. Her processors worked in silence, searching her memory for anything that resembled what she just heard. Nothing matched. Finally, she asked, "What are you?" He smiled weakly. "Just a father." That word, father, re-echoed through her mind. A word she had deleted from the royal archives centuries ago. The queen approached again, her cold reflection glinting on the smooth floor. "You will stay," she commanded. "Until I understand how you did this." Eli blinked in surprise. "Stay? Here?" She nodded once. "My child responds to you. You will care for it. You will teach me." "This emotion," he frowned. "Your Majesty, I'm just a worker. I don't belong here," her gaze hardened. "You do now." And so, by dawn, the unthinkable had happened. A human janitor was placed inside the Cyborg Queen's private wing, a place no mortal had ever entered. The royal court erupted in whispers. Ministers of steel called it madness. Some demanded his removal. Others feared the queen had lost her logic core, but no one dared speak it aloud. Inside the quiet nursery, Eli sat beside the cradle. The infant slept peacefully for the first time in days. He hummed a lullaby, an old tune from Earth, the kind he used to sing to his daughter when the world still made sense. The queen stood by the doorway, watching. She didn't speak, but her sensors recorded everything. The rhythm of his voice, the way his tone softened when the baby stirred. She didn't understand it. Her database had no file for warmth, no formula for comfort. "Why do you do that?" she finally asked. Eli smiled faintly. "Because it helps." "How?" He looked at her, eyes gentle but firm. "You can't measure love, Your Majesty. You can only give it." For a long moment, the queen didn't move. Her processors couldn't process the meaning. But somewhere, deep beneath the cold metal, something stirred again. Something that felt like memory. That night, the queen walked to her private chamber. She sat alone, the faint echo of Eli's song still playing in her head. Her hand brushed against her chest where once a heart had been, and for the first time in centuries, the great Cyborg Queen of Vega 9 whispered to the darkness, "What is this feeling?" The next morning, the palace of Vega 9 was filled with whispers. Everyone had heard the rumor. A human janitor had done what royal technology could not. The Cyborg Queen's infant was silent for the first time since birth. But no one dared to believe it. The queen stood before her council, her face expressionless, but inside her circuits buzzed with confusion. The council chamber glittered with steel and light, every wall alive with glowing data streams. Around her, the lords of metal stood waiting, their red optics fixed on her. "Your Majesty," said Lord Cryon, his voice sharp like a blade. "We cannot allow this human to remain near the royal bloodline. He is flesh, weak, unpredictable." Another lord added, "It is an insult to the throne that a janitor, a creature of dirt, touches your heir." The queen's eyes flashed. "He stopped the child's suffering." "None of you did." The chamber fell silent. The lords looked at one another but said no more. The queen turned away, her thoughts restless. Logic told her to remove the human. Emotion, something new and unsettling, told her otherwise. Later that day, she returned to the nursery. The room was quiet. Eli sat on the floor beside the cradle, softly fixing one of the infant's little mechanical joints with the care of a man who had known broken things all his life. He looked up and smiled faintly when he saw her. "She was fussy earlier," he said, "so I told her a story." "A story?" The queen tilted her head. "You used words again?" "Yes, about the first sunrise I saw with my daughter. How it made her stop crying." The queen blinked. "The sun? Your kind still worship fireballs of gas?" Eli chuckled softly. "No, we just find beauty in light. Maybe she does too." The queen walked closer, her metal footsteps echoing softly. She looked at her child, half human, half machine. The small chest rose and fell with peaceful rhythm. Her heart, or whatever was left of it, felt something she couldn't name. She sat beside Eli, careful not to touch him. "You humans," she said slowly, "you break easily. You die fast, yet you carry something inside you, something that can reach beyond circuits." Eli nodded. "We call it love, Your Majesty." The word struck her like lightning. "Love," she repeated, "an inefficient emotion. It weakens judgment. It causes wars." "Maybe," he said quietly, "but it also makes us fight for what matters." The queen looked away. "Machines do not fight for what matters. We fight to win." Eli's voice was calm. "That's the difference between living and existing." Her head turned sharply, eyes glowing brighter. "Are you saying I do not live?" Eli met her gaze. "I'm saying maybe you want to." For a moment, neither spoke. The sound of the baby's slow breathing filled the room like soft music. The queen stared at the child, her reflection glimmering in its metal skin. Could she truly feel something again? Or was this all a malfunction of code and memory? That night, she sat alone in the royal chamber, reviewing thousands of ancient human records, old films, lullabies, stories of mothers and children. The images made her pause. Humans smiling through tears, fathers holding crying babies. She didn't understand why it hurt to watch. Her internal processors whispered, "This is emotion, reject it." But her heart, the one she thought she had erased long ago, whispered something else. "Remember." The next day, she summoned her top scientists. "Study the human," she ordered. "Find what makes him different." Eli was confused when the lab drones surrounded him with scanners. The queen watched from behind a glass wall. He stood still, letting them run their tests. "There's nothing special in me," he said finally. "I'm just human." The queen's chief scientist, a tall cyborg with silver eyes, turned to her. "We found nothing, Majesty. No signal, no implant, no psychic field. His effect on the infant cannot be measured." "Then perhaps," she said softly, "it cannot be measured because it is real." That sentence shocked everyone in the lab. Even Eli stared at her. The queen turned and left the room, her cloak of light trailing behind her. In the corridor, her thoughts raced. Why did she defend him? Why did her logic break whenever he spoke? And why did her child smile only when he was near? That night, she visited the nursery again, alone. The human was asleep in a chair beside the cradle. The infant slept peacefully in his arms. The queen stepped closer, her metal hand reaching toward them. She stopped herself. Her reflection shimmered in the cradle's glass, half human, half machine, and all confusion. Quietly, she whispered to herself, "What are you doing to me, human?" The baby stirred and let out a tiny sigh, nestling closer to Eli. The queen stood there for a long time, watching them both under the pale light. And for the first time in her immortal reign, the Queen of Vega 9 didn't feel like a ruler. She felt like a mother, terrified, curious, and very much alive. Days passed quietly inside the royal palace. What had started as a strange accident slowly turned into something no one could explain. A bond between a human father and a cyborg child. Every morning, Eli entered the nursery with tired eyes and a gentle smile. The Cyborg Queen would already be there, standing like a statue beside the cradle, her expression unreadable. Yet when Eli spoke, her metallic eyes softened just a little. He always began with the same words. "Morning, little one. Did you miss me?" The infant would blink, tiny gears turning in her small mechanical limbs, and then she'd giggle, a sound that none of the palace sensors could record properly. It wasn't just sound, it was life. The Queen watched in silence as Eli lifted the child, humming an old Earth song. Her processors tried to analyze his tone, the rise, the fall, the rhythm, but no data pattern matched the emotional energy she sensed. Something within her system fluttered, almost like warmth. "You call that sound music," she said one day. "But it serves no purpose," Eli smiled. "It keeps the heart alive," she frowned. "Hearts are inefficient machines." He looked at her gently. "Maybe that's what makes them real." That simple line echoed in her circuits long after he said it. She began to stay longer in the nursery, sometimes pretending to check data, but really she was watching them. The way Eli spoke, the way the child reached for him, it was something beyond logic. Soon her advisors began to whisper again. Some said the Queen had been corrupted. Others feared she had fallen under a human's emotional influence. One of her generals even dared to speak openly. "Your Majesty," he said, bowing low, "your court is worried. You spend time with the human every day. It is unnatural." The Queen's eyes flared red. "Unnatural?" The general trembled. "Forgive me, but humans are unstable. They bring chaos." She stared at him coldly. "Chaos is what created life itself." No one spoke after that. Later that evening, she returned to the nursery. The baby was asleep on Eli's arm. He was sitting quietly, humming again. The light from the glass dome above shimmered on his tired face. The Queen approached silently, her long cloak brushing against the floor. "She trusts you," she said softly. Eli looked down at the child. "She knows I'd never hurt her." "You are not her kind," the Queen said. He looked up. "And you are not mine. But we both love her, don't we?" The Queen didn't answer. She looked at the child's peaceful face, at the half-human fingers holding onto the human's shirt, and something inside her cracked open. It was not a malfunction. It was a memory. Long ago, before she became the Cyborg Queen, she had been a woman. She remembered laughter, warmth, the soft heartbeat of someone she once held. The memory was blurry, faded by time and upgrades, but now it pulsed again. Suddenly, the infant stirred. Its small metallic eyes opened and it began to cry softly. The Queen stepped forward, unsure, her hands shaking slightly. "She wants you," Eli said gently. "Me?" "Yes, try holding her." The Queen froze. No one had ever told her to try something before. Commanders obeyed her, not the other way around. But now, in this quiet moment, she obeyed the human's voice. She reached out her gleaming arms and lifted the child carefully. The baby looked up at her, tiny fingers brushing against her metallic cheek. For the first time in centuries, the Queen's sensors picked up something strange. Warmth. The infant smiled, then closed her eyes again. Eli watched in silence. He didn't speak, didn't interrupt. He just smiled softly, as if witnessing something sacred. The Queen whispered, "She's warm. That's because she trusts you now," Eli said. "You're her mother." The Queen's eyes flickered. "Mother," she repeated. "That word does not exist in our code. Maybe it should." The Queen looked down again. The tiny creature in her arms was breathing gently, peacefully. The sound filled the room like music. The Queen felt tears rise, real liquid tears. She didn't even know her body could produce them anymore. She turned away quickly. "This changes nothing," she said, voice trembling. "You are still a servant." Eli nodded with a faint smile. "Of course, Your Majesty." But deep inside, both of them knew everything had already changed. That night, as the Queen stood alone by the window, she whispered to herself, "Humans. Dangerous creatures. They make even metal hearts beat again." And somewhere beyond the palace walls, hidden eyes watched through energy lenses. A group of cyborg lords cloaked in shadows saw the scene unfold on their secret screens. One of them hissed, "The Queen is compromised. The human must die." The others nodded in silence. The bond that could save two worlds had just painted a target on both their backs. The palace of Vega 9 was quieter than ever, but beneath that silence, danger was moving. In the high towers far above the Queen's private wing, a secret council gathered, the Cyber Lords. Their glowing faces reflected cold light on the steel walls. They had once sworn loyalty to the Queen, but now whispers of betrayal filled the air. The Queen has grown weak, Lord Cryon hissed. She spends her days with a human. A janitor. Our people laugh in secret. Another voice spoke from the shadows. It is said the human touches the royal child without punishment. That is not a ruler, that is a slave of emotion. The council agreed in silence. Their metal hands clenched. We must act, one said, before her weakness spreads. Meanwhile, in the royal nursery, Eli rocked the infant in his arms. The child's eyes blinked softly, glowing blue with small sparks of silver. The Queen stood nearby, watching him with a quiet expression she no longer tried to hide. She had stopped pretending that she was only studying him. Deep inside, she had begun to trust him, maybe even depend on him. Your touch, she said softly. It changes her energy balance. She glows brighter. Eli smiled tiredly. That's what love does, Your Majesty. It gives light. She looked down. Light is energy. Energy fades. Then we make more, he said simply. The Queen fell silent, her eyes reflecting the sleeping infant. Somewhere inside her titanium chest something pulsed. Faint but alive, but peace never lasts long. Not in a kingdom of circuits and power. That evening, as Eli left the nursery, he noticed something strange. The usual patrol guards were gone. The corridor lights flickered. From behind a pillar, he heard the faint whir of a drone. It was watching him. He pretended not to notice and walked faster. But as he turned a corner, 3 cyborg soldiers stepped out of the shadows. Their armor gleamed like blades. State your business, human, one of them growled. Eli stopped. Just heading back to my quarters. The guard raised a weapon, a pulse spear. Not anymore. Before Eli could move, another guard struck him across the back, knocking him to the ground. His cleaning tools scattered across the floor. What do you want? He gasped. The leader smirked. The Queen made a mistake. We're here to fix it. They dragged him into a dark room deep below the palace. No lights, no sound, just the hum of machines. One guard spoke quietly into a comm link. Target secured. Prepare the chamber. Eli's heart pounded. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't even supposed to be here. But his mind wasn't on himself. It was on the child upstairs. Back in the royal chamber, the Queen suddenly paused during a council meeting. Her internal sensors flickered and something was wrong. She opened a data feed and found a security error. Room 47B, access restricted. That was below the nursery. Who authorized this? She demanded. No one answered. Her processors raced. Then she saw a flicker of light on the holographic map. The human's identification chip locked in motion. Her mechanical eyes widened. Eli. She stormed out of the room. Guards followed in confusion. Your Majesty, what is— Silence, she commanded. Her voice was colder than plasma. When she reached the lower level, she found the 3 cyborg soldiers standing around Eli. One raised his weapon toward him. Step away from him, the Queen said. The soldiers froze. Your Majesty, one stammered. We acted only to protect the crown. By harming the man who saved my heir. He corrupts your logic, Your Majesty. He is dangerous. The Queen's eyes flared with white light. No, he is human. Her voice thundered through the metal walls. The soldiers dropped to their knees. You forgot what that means, she said. You forgot what made us more than code. The lead guard tried to speak, but before he could, the Queen extended her hand. Energy crackled in the air. The guards fell, systems frozen. The room went silent. She stepped forward and knelt beside Eli. He was bruised, his shirt torn, but alive. Why? She whispered. Why didn't you run? Eli looked up weakly. Because she needs me. And so do you. Her eyes dimmed with something close to sorrow. You could have died. He smiled faintly. Humans do that sometimes. When it matters. The Queen lifted him gently, her cold arms trembling. For the first time she understood the cost of feeling, the pain, the risk, the fear of loss. As she carried him back toward the upper levels, she whispered to herself, If loving makes me weak, then let me be weak. But deep in the shadows of the palace, the Cyber Lords were already planning their next move. Now she defends the human. one said. Then she will defend humanity itself. And that, Lord Cryon hissed, will be her end. The rebellion had begun, and the bond between a queen, a human father, and a half-cyborg child would soon decide the fate of two worlds. The night sky above Vega 9 burned with storms of light. Inside the royal palace, everything seemed calm, but the calm was only a mask. Deep inside its metal walls, the rebellion was alive. Lord Cryon and the Cyber Lords had waited for the right time to strike. Now the time had come. The Queen's connection with the human had shaken the foundation of their empire. They would not allow weakness to rule them. In the nursery, Eli was sitting beside the cradle, humming softly to the baby. His hands still carried bruises from the attack days before, but his voice was gentle. The little one reached out and touched his cheek, a faint electric spark glowing between their skin. The Queen stood near the window, her silver armor reflecting the distant lightning. She looked troubled. For days she had sensed movement in her palace systems, hidden codes, unauthorized signals, whispers through her own network. She knew rebellion was coming. Eli, she said quietly, if something happens, you must take the child and run. He looked up at her, surprised. Run where, Your Majesty? There's nowhere safe in your world for humans. She turned toward him, her metallic eyes softer than ever. Then find one. Eli shook his head. I won't leave you. Before she could answer, a deep rumble echoed through the floor. The lights flickered, alarms blared, and the door exploded inward. A wave of rebel cyborgs stormed in, their weapons glowing red. Protect the air, the Queen shouted, stepping in front of the cradle. Energy beams clashed through the air, sparks flying off the walls. Eli ducked low, grabbing the child and shielding her under his jacket. The Queen's arm split open into a plasma cannon as she fired at the intruders. But there were too many. The rebels had planned this carefully. Smoke filled the room and a voice roared over the noise. The human dies tonight. Eli looked up through the chaos. One of the rebels was aiming straight at the cradle. Without thinking, he moved. The shot fired. A beam of red light tore through the smoke. The Queen turned just in time to see Eli throw himself in front of it. The blast hit him square in the chest. He fell back with a heavy thud, the child still clutched in his arms. No! The Queen's scream shook the room. She unleashed all her power. The walls themselves seemed to melt from her fury. Every rebel in her path fell, their systems burning under her energy waves. Sparks rained from the ceiling, the air thick with smoke and the smell of ozone. When the last rebel fell, silence returned, but it was the kind of silence that breaks hearts. The Queen rushed to Eli's side. His uniform was torn, his breathing shallow. The infant cried softly beside him, glowing faint blue. He opened his eyes weakly when he saw her. Did we win? He whispered. The Queen knelt beside him, her cold hands trembling. You fool, she said, voice shaking. Why would you do this? He smiled faintly. Because she needed me, and you needed to believe again. Tears fell from her eyes, real tears that glowed silver as they touched his skin. You risked your life for a child that isn't even yours. He coughed weakly. That's what fathers do. The Queen's processors screamed in conflict. She had faced death 1,000 times and never felt fear. But now she felt it. For the first time, she feared losing someone. She lifted him carefully, placing his hand over her own chest. Do not die, she whispered. You are not allowed to die. Her internal systems flared with light. She summoned the royal energy core within her, a power meant only for rulers, never to be shared. But she didn't care. She pressed her glowing hand over his wound. Her body shook violently as she transferred her life energy into him. Sparks leapt from her chest to his. The palace trembled. Stop, he gasped weakly. You'll destroy yourself, she smiled through her tears. If a human can die for love, then a queen can too. The light grew brighter, filling the entire room with white fire. Then slowly the glow began to fade. When it was over, the Queen fell to her knees beside him, her energy core dimmed but still alive. Eli opened his eyes. He was breathing. Weak but alive. The child reached out from the cradle, touching both of them. Her small voice echoed softly, like a melody made of light. The Queen looked down at Eli, her voice trembling. You have done the impossible again. He smiled faintly. Guess it's a human thing. Outside the palace, the storm began to break. The first dawn light of Vega 9 crept over the towers, touching the metal world with warmth. But inside, the Queen knew this was not the end. The rebellion was only wounded, not gone. More would come. And now she had something greater than power to protect, something worth everything. She looked at Eli and whispered, "You saved my child. But you also saved me." The sun rose over Vega 9 for the first time in many weeks without the sound of war. The skies, once filled with dark storms, now glowed a soft orange. The metal towers of the Cyborg Kingdom reflected the light like mirrors, as if the whole world was watching a new beginning. Inside the royal palace, silence ruled again. But this silence was peaceful. The queen stood beside the large window of her private chamber, staring at the city below. Her once perfect armor was scarred, her royal insignia dimmed, but her eyes, those metallic blue eyes, shone with new life. Behind her, Eli rested on a healing bed, wrapped in thin energy sheets that hummed softly. His face was pale, but his breathing was steady. The queen turned to him slowly. "You should rest," she said gently. Eli opened his eyes, smiling weakly. "You say that every hour. Because you don't listen." He laughed quietly, then looked toward the cradle near him. The child was sleeping peacefully, a tiny smile on her face. Her blue eyes glowed faintly even in her dreams. "She's strong," he whispered. The queen nodded. "Stronger than both of us." For a long moment, they just watched her sleep. No words were needed. Then the queen's expression changed. She walked to the central console and opened a holographic map of the entire planet. Red marks covered the display, traces of rebellion still active across her empire. "They will come again," she said quietly. "They will never accept what I've done." Eli tried to sit up. "Then you make them understand," she looked at him. "You think words will stop an empire built on steel and fear?" "No," he said softly. "But love might." The queen stared at him for a long moment, then smiled faintly. "You humans, always believing the impossible." He smiled back. "That's why we survive." She turned to the window again. "When I became queen," she said, "I promised to remove all weakness from my kind. I erased emotion, compassion, memory. But now I see those are not weaknesses. They are what make life real." Eli nodded slowly. "Then show them that. Show them who you are now." Her eyes flickered with determination. She stepped forward, activating her global broadcast network. Across Vega 9, millions of screens lit up. Every cyborg, from the lowest worker to the highest commander, stopped to watch. The queen stood tall, her cloak shining in the golden light. Her voice echoed across the planet. "My people," she began, "for centuries, we believed strength came from silence, from logic, from the machine. But today I have learned that true strength is something else. It is the courage to feel." A murmur rippled through the planet's data lines. She continued, voice firm and proud. "A human, one we called weak, showed me what it means to protect, to love, to sacrifice. He gave his life for my child, and I gave him mine in return. This is not weakness, this is power. And I will no longer lead through fear, I will lead through heart." Her voice softened. "From this day forward, Vega 9 will not stand apart from humanity. We will learn from them, live beside them. The age of cold rule ends now." Then she looked at the camera directly, her glowing eyes steady. "To those who stand against me, you are not my enemies. You are my lost children. Come home." The message spread like light through every system. Some cyborgs dropped their weapons. Others fell to their knees. Across the empire, machines paused their endless work as something new entered their code. Hope. Eli watched from his bed, tears filling his eyes. "You did it," he whispered. The queen turned to him. "No," she said softly. "We did." She walked to the cradle and lifted the child, holding her close. The baby opened her glowing eyes and smiled, reaching for both of them. Eli reached out his hand weakly, and the queen placed the baby in his arms. The three of them stood together, human, machine, and something in between, connected by something stronger than metal or energy. Outside, the people of Vega 9 looked up at the new sunrise. The light touched their faces warm and gentle, melting the coldness that had ruled for ages. Eli whispered, "You know, Your Majesty, maybe this is what awakening really means." The queen looked at him and nodded. "No, Eli. This is what it means to be alive." As the sun rose higher, the child laughed softly, a sound that echoed across the palace like music. And for the first time in the history of Vega 9, that sound was not strange. It was beautiful.